My name is Barry Davis, and I'm a divorce mediator. I help my clients get through their divorce in the most economical, most constructive manner possible by using divorce mediation. So let me start out, first of all, by saying I'm not an attorney, and what I'm covering here in this video certainly should not be construed as legal advice. What I'm looking to provide you with is a basic understanding from a practical common sense perspective of spousal support, so that you know how it's calculated, what it's for, that kind of thing. So let's start with the most basic. Spousal support, unlike child support, actually has two periods that it's paid in. The first one, what's called temporary spousal support, is while the divorce is proceeding. After the judgment is finalized, there's what's referred to as either permanent or long-term support. I just simply refer to it as post-judgment support. And those two are somewhat different. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, the temporary support paid during the divorce proceedings is somewhat higher, under the theory that this is a transitionary period where the parties are going from living in one house to two homes, there's additional expenses, etc. But then generally the post-judgment support does go down a bit. Again, not always, but generally. Okay. The other thing that's important to know is that for post-judgment support, it is generally tax deductible to the person paying it, and it's considered taxable income to the person receiving it. That isn't necessarily the case for the temporary support, spousal support that is, that's going on during the divorce. Now, there are three things that I think are important to look at when we're looking at spousal support. Number one, the monthly amount that's paid. Number two, how long it's paid. And number three, whether it's modifiable or non-modifiable. So let's start with that first one, the monthly amount. There's a software program called the DissoMaster that, when we're dealing with child support, gives us a fairly black and white number that is generally going to be what we go with. When it comes to spousal support, that's generally just a starting point. That is the figure that we get from the DissoMaster. The calculation of the spousal support amount is a highly subjective analysis in a number of ways. One of which, for example, is that Family Code 4320, which is the family code that deals with spousal support, has no less than 15 factors, that's 1-5, that a judge is supposed to look at and analyze. And as if that isn't enough, the 15th factor is a catch-all. Anything else the judge believes is just and equitable. So you have 14 variables and then an open category. So I would propose that that means this is a very subjective analysis and can go one way or another. Now, let's look at how long it goes on for. Again, this is fairly open-ended. It is somewhat determined by the length of the marriage and whether that marriage was less than 10 years or 10 years or over. But there's numerous other factors that are part of those 15 factors in Family Code 4320 that relate not just to the monthly amount paid, but how long it will be paid for. Now, the third factor we're going to look at is the modifiability or non-modifiability of spousal support. So let me compare and contrast. Child support can never be made non-modifiable. It can never be locked in because it's for the benefit of the children. On the other hand, spousal support can be made non-modifiable, and you can break it down to either have non-modifiable monthly amount, a non-modifiable term, or both if the parties agree on that. However, it's important to know that the court started out with a default to modifiable amount and modifiable term, so that every time you want to change it, you got to pay the attorneys and go back to court. So this leads us to divorce mediation. This is one of the areas that I believe divorce mediation shines, because it allows the clients that I work with to come up with a creative, individualized approach. It allows them to deal with this from their life circumstances and come up with something that works for them on an ongoing basis. Let me give you an example. If I have a stay-at-home parent that's been stay-at-home for 5, 7, 10 years, we can come up with a very specific plan for how that person will re-enter the workforce that balances out their need to have support and potentially have higher levels of support in the short term, with the needs of the paying spouse to not be paying high levels of support on an ongoing basis. And we can go back and forth on that and come up with an individualized agreement and plan that works for the parties if they're reentering the workforce, if they need to go back and get some more training before they re-enter the workforce, if the children are young or they're not school age yet, how are they going to do that? And we can oftentimes lock in a plan that, again, balances the interests of the parties versus the alternative of litigating, which means a vocational analysis that'll cost you $2,000 to $4,000, multiple court dates, and even that probably won't end it, because then in 6 months or 12 months or maybe 2 years, something else will change in the employment and income equation, and you'll need to go back to court. So that's just a little bit about spousal support. Again, this should not be considered legal advice, but hopefully it gives you a plain English practical understanding of spousal support and allows you to start understanding it so that you can move on from there. If you have additional questions, please feel free to check out my website at davismediation.com. Thank you very much.